I was completely unaware of the Star Wars universe until about 1998 when I was 9 years old. I happened to be in a hospital waiting room waiting for my little sister to be born. There were books on the table in the room, and one was a Star Wars book. I don't remember exactly what brand or what kind of book it is. It might have been like a little golden book, but I distinctly remember being able to move Luke Skywalker over the ledge that he jumps with Leia. Either way, I looked through these pictures of this book about Star Wars, A New Hope, and I was intrigued. When it came to the original trilogy, my family never owned any of the original films. However, in the small town where I grew up, there was a small store that would sell things like trinkets and novelties and video games and movies. Its name was Good Earth, and it also did rental movies and rental video games. Many of my earliest video game memories, such as renting Top Gear 3000 or Pilot Wings for the Super Nintendo, can be traced directly there. But for this story, we rented episodes 4, 5, and 6 of Star Wars from Good Earth on separate weekends. It was then that my Star Wars fandom began, though admittedly, it's not as big as it once was before certain movies were released that have been talked about endlessly. I'm not going to cover stuff like that in this video. The same year that my sister was born and I watched the OG Star Wars Rebellion, oftentimes known as Star Wars Supremacy, was released. Developed by Coolhand Interactive and published by LucasArt in 1998, Star Wars Rebellion is a pausable, real-time 4X Star Wars strategy game that takes place immediately after the Battle of Yavin at the end of Episode 4. You can choose to command the Rebel Alliance or Empire, taking control of their fleets, planets, and characters. Critics were split on the game, with several loving it and many hating it or calling it mediocre. In fact, it received worse reviews than Victoria 1, the last game I wrote a retrospective on. NetJack gave Rebellion a putrid 3 out of 10, writing, "I honestly don't know what LucasArts was thinking with this one, or how the people who designed the game could have possibly thought that what they were making was fun." GameSpot rated it a middling 4.5 out of 10, proclaiming, "This is a sloppy game that bears all the hallmarks of being shoved out the door half-finished." Other reviews were more kind. Computer Game Strategy Plus gave it a glowing review, rating it 4.5 stars out of 5. Jason Ocampo wrote, quote, "All in all, this is a marvelous game that succeeds because it takes some rather large risks that pay off. The game's execution is nearly flawless, and it comes with the high polish and finish that LucasArts is known for." End quote. Rebellion represented my first foray into grand strategy games. I was little and filled with wonder when it came to the Star Wars universe. But more than that, the game was downright fun. In the years since I first played it, I have come to believe that Rebellion is the greatest Star Wars strategy game ever made. It was also one of my first Star Wars games, along with the Super Star Wars games that came out on Super Nintendo. Eventually, I would go on to voraciously play other games in the same universe, such as X-Wing Alliance, or Rogue Squadron, or Empire at War, or Rebel Assault, and I'm sure others that I'm forgetting in this moment. So, what did many critics miss about Star Wars Rebellion? And what makes it an absolute blast to play? Well, let's talk about it. As you have probably already guessed, the goal of Star Wars Rebellion is to eliminate your rival.
There are 2 game modes, a quicker one in which you capture or destroy your enemy's capital, or a full campaign in which you must capture their capital, but also capture or kill their 2 greatest leaders. For the Alliance, that's Luke Skywalker and Mon Mothma, and for the Empire, that's the Emperor and Darth Vader. The Alliance is colored red in the game, while the Empire is green.
Planets can be captured through a combination of diplomacy, sabotage, or violence. One of Rebellion's greatest strengths is the variety with which you can conquer the stars. If you have trained Jedi or personnel, you can implode a planet from within or destroy entire ships. If not, powerful fleets have the same effect.
In the meantime, you are defending your hard-earned planet from sabotage from the other side. Additionally, you are managing the construction of buildings, troops, and starships, all the while keeping an eye on your maintenance. And as the game progresses, your research and development teams are creating new types of troops, planetary structures, and ships. When you've learned the mechanics and memorized how to access information, it's very satisfying and often mesmerizing. You've probably heard the phrase, one more turn. In Rebellion, it's one more day, one more planet, one more starship. But let's jump into what you're actually doing during your playthrough. The first thing that will happen when you start a new game is that you will be treated to a 1990s CGI cutscene. I absolutely love these and always enjoy watching them during the major parts of my playthrough. I sometimes think of them as unique and separate from all of the controversies, both deserved and undeserved, of the prequels, sequels, and special editions. They're just a little bit of pure Star Wars. After the cutscene, you are greeted by robot companions that act as a rudimentary tutorial to the game. When this introduction is finished, you have full access to the game and all of its mechanics. If this beginning gets too overwhelming, you can also click on one of your automaton friends and automate certain productions in your vast empire. I particularly like to do this with managing my garrisons, as I often lose track of which planets have how many troops and sometimes forget to build enough.
When entering a new game, it can be a bit overwhelming, and each new game has differences in the number of fleets, where troops are, and more. So, where are your starships, or construction sites, or important people? Well, there are a variety of ways to find out that information.
First, certain things will always happen at the beginning of a playthrough. The Empire is sending a fleet to Yavin. Several important Alliance personnel are on that very planet, and the Emperor is normally on Coruscant. Second, there are different map modes that you can switch between, such as seeing which planet has shipyards or the ability to build troops. Third, you can use the in-game search function to look for specific people. As you look, you can adjust your game speed. I always start with very slow, as I figure out the galactic situation. I would prefer to pause, but you're not able to give commands or move people while pause is engaged. After you know where everyone is, you have decisions to make. In a normal playthrough for me, where I tend to play the Rebel Alliance, I immediately move everyone out of Yavin to the Rebel capital. While there, I start recruiting new personnel. At the beginning of the game, you will not have access to many characters. To gain access to more, you must send characters on recruitment missions on planets in order to find more people. Not all characters can complete these missions, however, and the ones that can tend to be plot important. These characters are extremely important. They can go on specific missions, train to be Jedi, which will allow them greater success in various types of missions. They can research new technologies and command parts of your fleet.
While this is happening, I start building the skeleton of an industrial empire. Construction sites, training sites, and shipyards allow you to build newer, greater, and vaster numbers of things you'll need to defeat your enemies. And advantages stack. For me, I build one of 4 kinds of planets: a construction planet, a training troops planet, a shipyard planet, or a mining and refinery planet. Mining and refinery, which we'll talk a lot more about later, is a major part of sustaining your sprawling empire and keeping it working efficiently. For each mine and refinery you have, you gain 50 maintenance points, which is a kind of currency in the game.
But these are not quite enough in the early game, in my opinion. Another thing that I like to do, potentially to gain an extra construction site on a planet or earn additional maintenance, is to bring neutral planets to your side. Neutral planets are colored light blue. Below them is a bar that is filled with both red and green. The more red, the more they support the Alliance. The more green, the more they support the Empire. Characters such as Han Solo and Princess Leia are able to be sent on diplomacy missions in which they can try to convince the Switzerlands of Star Wars to join their side. That said, not every character has the same diplomatic rating. For example, Han Solo has a terrible diplomatic rating, while Princess Leia has a very good one. In the early game, this is your day-to-day, trying to build and balance, survive, and expand. That said, I have intentionally left out talking about fleets extensively, so let's do that now.
Fleets, in my opinion, are the most important part of Rebellion other than personnel. Classic Star Wars ships, along with many others, populate the game and can be built at your discretion depending on the advancement of your technology and the maintenance points at your disposal. Some ships have specific roles, such as fighter carriers and transporting troops, while others are there for their firepower. The most powerful ships, such as the Bulwark Cruiser and the Death Star, can both carry fighters, carry troops, and have very high hit points and firepower. Naturally, each side has entirely different ships that you can build. And by the way, not only can you have a Death Star in Rebellion, you can have multiple of them so long as they are not in the same fleet at the same time.
Fleets have many functions in Rebellion. They, of course, fight other fleets. They are able to transport fighters, troops, and personnel. They can also bombard planets in order to eliminate enemy troops, defenses, or even civilian structures to damage enemy infrastructure. But be warned, wanton slaughter of civilians will turn opinions of planets in the same star system against you. Altogether, an intricate dance is performed in Rebellion. Do you bomb a planet and risk a mistake that could turn a dozen planets against you? Perhaps you send a few talented people on a covert mission to sabotage a battalion of troops, risking their capture. Is it better to build a fighter carrier and fill it with B-Wings, or is it better to build a Mon Calamari cruiser? There isn't always a right or wrong answer, and that's part of the beauty of it all.
It can take weeks or often months for ships to travel to the far-off reaches of the galaxy. There are 3 commands that can be assigned to your fleet. Those 3 commands are Commander, General, and Admiral, and the effectiveness of each is dependent on the leadership score of the character you choose. Admirals increase the firepower and the shields of your non-fighter starships. Generals increase how well your troops operate, while also simultaneously decreasing the effectiveness of opposing forces. Finally, commanders increase the combat effectiveness and speed of your fighters.
One of the most fun parts of Rebellion is when two opposing fleets meet. Actually, a better way to say that is a potentially fun part of Rebellion is when this happens. Fleets are able to flee if a specific ship on either side has not yet been researched, which prevents enemy ships from escaping. When a battle takes place, however, you have two choices: to simulate the battle or take command of it. Simulating does exactly that, and the computer instantaneously completes the battle for you. Commanding your fleet is much more exhilarating, assuming you have more than a handful of ships on both sides. Choosing to manually control a single ship is quite boring, but when both sides have dozens of capital ships with hundreds of fighters, well, that can be an amazing experience. By the way, today, both the Steam and GOG versions of Rebellion are missing .dll files that need to be downloaded separately for the textures in these battles to work properly. While manually controlling your fleet, you can have your ships focus on certain groups, such as starships or fighters, or command them to attack a specific ship. I don't know if this is a good strategy, but I normally have my strongest capital ships attack other capital ships, along with my Y-Wings and B-Wings, while I normally have my weaker ships and my A and X-Wings take on fighters. For the Empire, they can build multiple Death Stars. These ships are able to completely obliterate a single ship every few minutes during battle. Even cooler is that it can blow up entire planets. Those pesky rebels keep moving their capital or transporting their important people. You can literally just keep blowing up planets until they have nowhere else to run. Defeating a powerful fleet in this manner is very satisfying and can devastate your enemy or put your war effort back on solid ground. I will say, however, the AI of Star Wars Rebellion is quite weak. Even on the hardest difficulty, it's quite difficult to get your opponent to build a comparable fleet to yours late in the game. One extremely cool thing about Rebellion, however, is that you can also face off against human opponents. I only did this once against my brother via LAN, in which we both built massive fleets, ones that the computer could never hope to construct. And for the record, I won. But wait, how do you build a powerful fleet in the first place? And how can you afford one? Well, let's talk about the infrastructure of Rebellion.
As mentioned before, you can build different facilities on different planets that allow you to construct troops or ships or even other buildings. The amount of buildings that can be constructed on a planet is not unlimited, however. There is a series of blue dots underneath every planet, and that represents the energy that a single building can take up. Underneath the blue dots are orangish red dots that represent the resources that that planet has. In other words, it translates to how many mines can be built on that planet. Consequentially, mines take up one of each of those reddish-orange dots.
For me, planets with few resources to mine, but many building spaces, are perfect for shipyards or construction sites and vice versa. However, mining resources is not enough. You must also have refineries throughout your empire. Refineries create materials to be used to create everything you build. If you don't have enough refineries, you will see delays in construction throughout the universe, even if you have plenty of maintenance points. And for each refinery and mine built in your realm, you gain an additional 50 maintenance points. The first thing I tend to do in a new game is start building construction sites. These allow for the speedy creation of more construction sites, which multiply and compound your ability to create things quickly. These, in turn, can be used to create shipyards, barracks, refineries, and mines, which will catapult your industrial ability into hyperdrive.
You should always keep an eye on your maintenance level. If a refinery or a mine is sabotaged, costing you 50 maintenance points, that forces you into a maintenance deficit. When you're in a maintenance deficit, any building or fighter or ship in the entire galaxy that you own could burst into flames. As with other parts of the game, it creates this enjoyable balancing act where you might kick yourself later on for digging too deep and too greedily, but it is a predictable consequence of your actions.
Another aspect of Rebellion, which I have mentioned several times, are characters and the missions you can send them on. I think now is an excellent time to dive into that.
Personnel play an integral part in Rebellion. Not only can you give them commands to increase bonuses for your fleet, but you can send them on numerous missions that advance your interests. Each character has different abilities. For example, diplomacy, espionage, and combat. The more your characters go on successful missions, the more those skills increase. That is, except for Luke Skywalker, it's actually more beneficial when he fails a combat or espionage mission because that gives him a force growth and that causes several of his skills to increase at the same time. But like every other character, he also improves at the chosen skill when he is successful at a mission.
Characters can be sent throughout the galaxy to perform different missions. Early in the game, diplomacy might be the most important along with recruitment. Later in the game, capture missions and sabotage missions can be crucial to your success. As a side note, the Empire can also send people on assassination missions, which is just a cool difference between the two sides. Missions, however, can be dangerous. Their success is dependent not only on your character's own skills, but how many troops are stationed on the planet you are sabotaging, as well as if enemy characters are on that planet. Sending an important character on a crucial mission to take out a shield generator might be worth it, but are the potential consequences? That's for you to decide. Luke and the other Jedis can also perform Jedi training missions, which will increase character attributes across the board. There are also unique events if Luke meets Darth Vader or the Emperor, with fun voice lines playing it out.
You failed, Your Highness.
Luke
I am a
Skywalker has
Jedi,
escaped.
like my
I
father
never doubted
before
he
me.
would.
You'll pay the price for your lack of vision.
Some characters, such as Wedge Antilles, can also help with research and development. On the attributes page of each character, you can see if someone can help with troop, ship, or construction research. To have them do so, assign them on a mission to a planet that has a corresponding training grounds, shipyard, or construction site.
With a powerful enough cadre of characters, you can dismantle the most important structures of your enemies, from barracks to starships. As the Rebellion, for example, you have to make certain to have plenty of troops in your capital. Otherwise, a handful of Imperial commandos could slip in and blow it all up. Speaking of being blown up, let's talk about defending your planets.
There are a few ways to keep your rivals at bay. One is to keep enemy fleets off of your doorstep. Potentially, having a few dozen fighters can ward them off some of your more important planets. You could also lure them away by attacking an important planet of the other side, or simply station a fleet in a nearby star system should they try to run amok. But if you have no fleets to defend your skies, troops and planetary defenses work as well. Depending on the level of your technology, there are differently powered shields and lasers that can protect your planets. Importantly, you'll also want troops on your planet. Otherwise, your defenses can be sabotaged, rendering your defenses useless. But with the right defenses, often your enemies will fire, hoping to eliminate troops, and you are able to play an Uno reverse card and destroy one of their starships instead. Another thing to consider is that planets can also be invaded. If you have 2 shield generators, a planetary assault is impossible. But let's say you have only 1, even if the enemy can't shoot through it, they can send troops through it. Depending on the skill of your troops compared to them, it could very well be a rout. But then again, with enough well-trained personnel, you could potentially sabotage one of the invading troops, or maybe one of the generators, or perhaps the ship that is carrying the troops they intend to use in the invasion.
This is the enjoyable harmony of Star Wars Rebellion. Problems with multiple answers that can be solved differently every time or at different times. Time and effort culminating in a problem or solution that you might not have foreseen, or maybe it all becomes the crowning moment of a meticulously crafted plan. At some point in this video, you might have thought, wow, this really sounds like another Star Wars game called Empire at War. In many ways, it is an updated version of Rebellion. You have ships, you have fleets, you have missions. I enjoyed Empire at War when it was released, but I was disappointed when I compared it to Rebellion. That's not to say it's a bad game or that you're wrong if you like it more than Rebellion. It's just a difference of opinion. My disappointment stems from what I viewed as a simplification of many of the aspects of Rebellion, such as smaller planet sizes, fewer things that you can build, and smaller battles. Based on strategy and resource management alone, I do believe that Star Wars Rebellion is the greatest Star Wars strategy game ever made. But more importantly, what do you think? Did you play Rebellion back in the day? Do you play Rebellion today? Did you think Empire at War blew Rebellion right out of the water? Please, let me know below. And most importantly, thank you so much for watching.